Hey everyone, good morning. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I am so grateful that you're here for our daily medicine transmission for the 17th of March, 2022. It is St. Patrick's Day. I really don't have much to offer in terms of what that means, what it stands for, who the snakes are, who St. Patrick is, what the motive was. But so I don't really have any need to speak to that today. What I do want to talk about is love at the core of who we are and to remain as much as we can connected to that principle as we are about to embark on this incredibly powerful full moon that's going to be on the 18th, which is tomorrow, 3:18 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So very, very soon after the turnover into the 18th. But we do have quite a bit leading up to this point as well astrologically because of the full or the moon in Virgo, right? We're at 99% luminosity. It is big, it is bright, it is full, and Virgo is about our astral and energetic hygiene. It's about the works that we implement within ourselves and with the resources that are ours that we identify to labor and to put into form and to blend the duality and the dualistic nature of our own consciousness or our own spirit with our material form. This is the realm where it actually happens. The internalized alchemical transmutation is exercised in the sixth house and in Virgo. So I know for me personally, I still feel as if I'm doing battle in my sleep. My poor partner, he has to wake me up, throughout the night to like push me back over to my side of the bed because I'm just like rolling everywhere and just doing battle. And even last night, with all of this Virgo and Pisces, so much Pisces energy, it's very easy to get lost at sea, to not be able to keep your head afloat. And with the moon in Virgo, wow, this is an opportunity that we've had in terms of our emotional landscape and our feelings and the part of us that is more subconscious, that is more sensitive, that's more intuitive, has had an opportunity to find like a lifeboat within ourselves right now, or to master the ability to bring that fluid, nebulous, formless spiritual nature into our very form. And I know I feel like that's been very difficult for a lot of people. And the dark side of Virgo is kind of like hoarding and going into hermit mode, not is to do work on oneself or to master one's internal realm, but to, push away, to be in that escapism or to isolate oneself because it is too difficult to, or haven't figured out, I guess, how to step forward into the social contract with everything that has been developed, everything that has been labored and brought forward. Because there is an implicit giving of something with Virgo. The whole point is to give the fruit that bears the seed of the next cycle. It's not like the fruit or the plant doesn't continue to grow the fruit forever, right? And if you do that, or you find yourself in that sixth house, never, breaking out into the social contract, into the relationship itself, this is where things can turn into more of an abscess, right? It's a gross analogy, but it's exactly the right one in terms of the dark side of Virgo. So a lot of people are doing that. There is consciousness and their spirit is abscessing because they're not going to be able to make the leap, so to speak, from this full moon, even though it'll be so big and obvious and fully illuminated. The sheer power of our personality, the sheer power of our own emotional center, the love that is at the core, that willpower can come in and just seize the moment and in some ways it can seize the moment and induce a very necessary change or catharsis, but it also can step forward if it's a service to self type of mentality to just induce that change or that catharsis, or to just seize power in a dramatic moment. So it can go a number of ways. But what I do feel is we're all still battling with this within ourselves, and the full moon, as full moons are, right? Total illumination and reflection back to us what normally is hidden within ourselves and something that is less obvious visually, right? This is the sun allowing for this exposure and for this illumination. And where's the sun? Well, it is in Pisces still. So lots to talk about astrologically. Let's get into the chart so that we can really break down today's energy. Love is at the core, and there's a sense of innocence that Virgo truly represents as in, be like little children, because without that simplicity, without that innocence, without that radiant and fresh perspective as a spiritual being mastering their material realm, then this is where you find that abscess, right? Or you find that hoarding or that greed or just wanting more and more and more. And the true Virgo nature is to go into the depths of who we are and to bring out the light in order to offer it in service to what our relationships, the social contract, whatever that seventh house in Libra represents. This is the whole point. Much like the plant bears the fruit that holds the seed for the next cycle. And speaking of seeds and cycles, we are so close to a vernal equinox, right? The March equinox. So there's going to be a reading sale and a report for this coming very soon. So keep an eye out for that, especially if you're looking to get a reading for basically up until the solstice, from the equinox to roughly the solstice. How does it bloom? Keep an eye out for that, because I'm going to offer a sale and some Reiki session add-on. So one thing I also want to share as we kind of get into the essence of what's going on here, and I'll put more of this on Telegram, more specific information. And if you want to be part of Telegram, and we have a great chat, it's not huge, but that also allows for a lot more trust and intimacy within the group. The link is in the description box below. It's the only social media that I utilize, right? I do have a Facebook page. It's still parked there, but I don't interact with Facebook at all. I've noticed actually, it's a very noticeable and a strong correlation between my own mental and emotional health and my use of Facebook. It's not everybody has that experience, but I do, and I notice it almost immediately. And that makes me wonder about like the signals and the underlying messaging that's coming through the use of Facebook that really just like triggers that sense of self-worth or lack thereof and needing to keep up with everything else, right? Facebook has got a weird energy, and it's like, I wonder, these are the things that I think about, these are the things we talk about in the Starseed Fellowship, like what kind of energy is embedded in the code of Facebook that actually might be having a subconscious impact on us. These are the types of things I think about. So if you're interested in having those discussions and really having the difficult discussions, really getting into the topics without fear of reprisal or being judged, again, great opportunity to get on Telegram and a great opportunity to join the Starseed Fellowship twice a month on Zoom, right? Where we can all see each other and chat. So the other thing I wanted to bring up that I'm going to go into more detail on Telegram about is that I discovered through just going to spaceweather.com, like I do every day, spaceweather.com, spaceweathernews.com. I checked the Schumann resonance. And of course, there was a huge blackout yesterday. There was a massive earthquake, two earthquakes in Japan right off of Fukushima that was really strong, as you probably already saw, that made the rounds yesterday. And there's also a lot more seismic activity right now in many parts of the world that's much higher magnitude, including a strong 5 to 6 magnitude earthquake in Iran right near their coastal region. And these are very shallow earthquakes, right? 10 kilometers. And I'm sure that there are legitimate explanations for why that is, but I've also heard other explanations about having such shallow but large earthquakes being attributed to something that's not natural. It's just an idea. So what I discovered is that and I didn't discover it, I discovered that it exists, is that when there are these really strong CMEs, these coronal mass ejections, which we just had, right? Earlier in the week, there was like this massive CME that was just pummeling us with plasma. Well, what I discovered is that these CMEs actually sweep cosmic rays out of the way. And if you know, cosmic radiation is has a really strong, it's very high level radiation. It any kind of exposure to it when you get outside of the protective field of the planet, the magnetosphere and the atmosphere, those cosmic rays really have an impact on astronauts in the space station, right? Airline travel, all of these things, and us. Cosmic rays have a measured impact on psychological health, physiological health, especially cardiovascular health. And so it's interesting that when we get pummeled with this plasma from these CMEs, from the solar weather, it sweeps these cosmic rays. Now, something else to consider in certain circles is that these cosmic rays, for as impactful as they are and high radiation, they're also expediting the DNA upgrades. They are expediting our own consciousness because this is high level radiation. And what is radiation other than information? It's light, it's energy. So I didn't know that. I didn't know that, and it has a very specific name too. So I thought that was interesting, that cosmic rays are getting swept away by these CMEs. And in fact, the CME that just blasted like on the 14th or the 15th actually is still sweeping. There hasn't been any real cosmic rays for days. And if you notice, the geomagnetic activity and disturbances is starting to taper, right? And that's gonna change, right? There'll be another coronal hole stream. There was a flare and filament eruptions on the sun. So I mean, I could talk about this forever, right? This is a very important thing to understand, which is our sun, right? This is a big part of how we're here. So I'll put more on that on Telegram. I'll link to the specific sources so you can check it out for yourself. I just think that's interesting. I don't have anything else to add, but this is a great place to start a conversation. So let's actually get into the chart for today. And this image actually is sourced from spaceweather.com spaceweather.com. They have a whole gallery. So that's linked in the description box below for you. And we're going to bring up the chart now. So, and I'll move myself out of the way. All right, guys, so it's the 17th. It is, like I said, our moon is in Virgo, and the first real transit of today actually happened this morning, right? You can see here, 8:21 Eastern Standard Time. We have Mercury in a sextile to Uranus. Now, Uranus has moved into a new degree very recently. And as I've talked about, when these larger, slower moving planets that have to do with cohorts of people, generations of people, they have to do with larger spans of time, when they move degrees and change the imagery associated with that degree, like in terms of Sabian symbols, you can feel it. You can tell that the archetypal resonance has changed in relation to that particular planet or astrological body, right? That celestial body. So the glitching of the matrix for the past couple of weeks with Uranus has been pretty obvious. And now it's moved into a position where we've kind of made some decisions, right? We have to carry the weight or the baggage of that which we want to attain, that we want to have. And Taurus is very much about having, right? It is what is ours to have. This is at its most fundamental level, the living soil, fertility, the natural resonance. And as we know with the North Node in conjunction with the Pleiades, still for a little bit longer, we're soon going to move out of that territory. So we're still in this Pleiadian revival, which I really hope many of us have taken full advantage of the draw towards the Pleiades, and the Pleiadian starseed signature is an evolutionary trajectory, because it's been important for us to not only find balance within ourselves, find balance between us and the natural world, find balance in terms of our heart chakra, our polarity of gender, and to tap into our empathic, mystical, healing aspect of the Pleiadian nature. Now, it's not all fuzzy and warm, as I've explained many times in, personal readings, Pleiadian star seeds, and in other types of content, that the feminine aspect of the Pleiadian nature has been very overcooked, right? And there's a whole realm that gets forgotten about when it comes to the Pleiadians, which is the masculine. And I actually get a lot of starseed clients who have one of their prominent Pleiadian markings is Mars, right? Mars is the divine masculine. Mars is the seed. Mars penetrates, right? Mars is the encapsulation of all of our potential and desire to be. And Mars acts on it. That's what it represents, is our action, our masculine action that is not thought about, it is just done. And so that's a whole part of the Pleiadian nature, and where the North Node is going to by the end of today. And we're going to see this beautiful mystic rectangle with the moon and opposite Neptune, and Neptune being involved with the nodes as well. This really beautiful opportunity to release the tension of these two oppositions, as we're going to see. But we have to acknowledge that being incarnated, right, being in a material reality, even with a consciousness that is able to transcend that and understand its spiritual nature in its fullness, we still have to contend with and live out the experience of survival, right? And that's part of the masculine energy of where the North Node is at 23 to 24 degrees. It's actually quite a disturbing image in terms of Sabian symbols, which is like the classic indigenous North American Indian, right? Now, remember, these symbols were intuited by a medium, Elsie Wheeler, in very early 20th century. So it still embodies a lot of the imagery and the connection to that imagery that they had at that time. So it's this idea that the indigenous North American, right, is on their horse, and they are, they have a collection of scalps, right? And this is not to... there's so much baggage wrapped up in that, right? And all of those characterizations. The idea here is that being in material form comes with this moment of survival and almost using aggressiveness for survival. And it's a brutal world out there, right? When you are living in communion as, a material being trying to survive in the natural elements, there is this sense that survival is part of it. And as you get closer to Gemini, this is the distinction, and the differentiation is starting to make itself known as well. And this is a moment where we start to feel the differentiation, but it's very culturally based. It's very... it's very much connected into instinct and a sense of protection. And this is something that gets bypassed a lot with the Pleiadian nature. And, I'm going to be really transparent here, just so you understand. And I know many other people can attest to this particular degree in their chart, but this is my nadir. This degree is my fourth house cusp, where my root system is. And so there is a very strong masculine, almost aggressive component to where I am emotionally situated, where I'm rooted emotionally, where my personal power comes from the ability to exercise this almost aggressive nature to survive. And I'm not suggesting that we go and collect scalps necessarily. It's all imagery. But when you feel like you are at risk of being taken over by what seems like your enemy, you will, out of survival, and this is really important to consider as we are moving through this time right now, is that we all will will act in accordance with natural instinct and to our gut in order to survive. And I think it's going to be an interesting time as the North Node is sitting in this degree. And then the South Node, of course, in Scorpio is my midheaven, right? And it's the challenge to transform that peak experience of full inspiration, of knowing the truth of who you are and the power that we generate together. It's about applying that to your everyday life. It's you've gone to the Sermon on the Mount, you've been inspired, you have access to this truth, this really deep truth, and where power comes from. Now it's time to apply that to your everyday life. It's the crowd going home from the sermon that the South Node is representing by the end of today. And there is so much power here, right? That we can take that inspiration of our power together and the energy that we produce through our sharing and our communion and our cooperation, or, in our life in general. We can apply that to our everyday life. That's the challenge. And we're going to see how this mystic rectangle is going to be awesome by the end of today. Real opportunity to release the tension of stuff that may feel so connected to our survival in some ways that we may not even be quite aware of it. I am, just because this is aspecting me very strongly, and I'm curious to see how it goes today. So Mercury in this major first transit is in a sextile to Uranus, also in the same area of Taurus. And like I said, now we are feeling the weight of the baggage. And I'm not suggesting that we want, having a compulsion to gain things, to have material comfort, to consolidate our resources in some way. That is in itself not negative. It's that Uranus is a trickster, and Uranus is not going to be bogged down by any baggage, right? Because Uranus is higher knowing. It's a higher state of consciousness. It is something that is outside of the material, but very much in alignment with it. So the sextile from Mercury is at the same degree, as you can see right here, is at the same degree as the new moon that we just had, right? We're still in this lunar cycle, and we don't want to forget that. And let's remind ourselves what this new moon was about. We want to identify the avatar or the image or the symbol of a consecrated person, whatever that means to us, as something that we can either follow in the footsteps of or be that person. And I would say with the new moon, we are all developing and growing within ourselves to be that person in some way. But it's a very significant symbol. It's very sharp. It is a sword, right? It cuts. And so Mercury, being the ruling planet of the mind and the nervous system, and the swords being the air element, this is very relevant, even though Mercury is in Pisces right now. So we have a mental an opportunity to mentally familiarize ourselves or reconnect to this new moon. Okay, and to consider how we can utilize our willpower as quote unquote a spiritual weapon. And that spiritual weapon is absolutely symbolized by this particular degree of Pisces, the sword in the museum, right? This is, in fact, a weapon. Now, you can use weapon, you can use tool interchangeably, but a sword or a firearm or a grenade or a bomb is a weapon, right? There's really no other use for it. But a sword, I suppose, can be a tool for other things, but honestly, even a sword was built in order to be a weapon, and a spiritual weapon at that. So the sextile to Uranus, I think that this releases us from the weight of the baggage and allows us to remember what we initiated with this new moon in the first place. And so it's growing within us, but this Mercury it's almost like our mind can wield that sword in some ways, or our mind can connect into the willpower, spiritual willpower that is the instrument for divine energy to move through, or God's will. So, in the sextile to Uranus, this is a descent of the material, and I would say Uranus and Taurus is very much that, and the ascent, or the descent of the spiritual, which is Mercury and Pisces, the ascent of the material, right? We're looking at the six-pointed star, the sextile, the Star of David, right? The Seal of Solomon, and, it is laden with symbolism now that keeps us from actually being able to have any kind of objective conversations about what these symbols actually represent and what they mean. So, but in this case, we see a transmutational potential, an investment into releasing ourselves from the baggage and to remember why we're doing all of this. And Uranus will trigger our awakening. Uranus is a very rapid shift in perspective. Excuse me. Uranus allows for a higher knowing through something that turns things on its side, right? It goes sideways, and it's definitely a trickster. It's definitely able to move in and out of I don't want to say move in and out of reality, but you are talking about something that is beyond just the material objective reality right now, but still very much connected to it. And so to have the baggage of what we have really committed ourselves to in terms of our awakening process and what we want, right? We have to carry the load now. And that can be very difficult for Uranus. And I think the glitching is still very much there, but now I feel a solidification. So the sextile with Mercury is kind of a reminder what we've been growing within ourselves, and now Mercury as the agent of the sword, agent of the mind, agent of that spiritual willpower, is able to activate and transcend for us, or allow for us to transcend the weight and the density of the baggage and plug back into the much more innovative, futuristic, and higher consciousness, perspective of Uranus. So this is where the day starts here at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if we go through the moon transits, we'll find where we're going to find opposition, which is actually a lot still up until the very end of the day, which is when the moon is opposite Neptune, and then the mystic rectangle with the nodes as well. So in the meantime, there is opposition to Jupiter. You can see that right here. Whoops. I'll make sure you guys can see this chart. Opposition to Jupiter, opposition to and quincunx to Juno at the very same time, basically. So Juno and Jupiter are, husband and wife. They have a contractual marriage. And for the moon in Virgo to have a challenging aspect to both of them is very interesting. And it's about following our inner guidance. It's about getting into the deeper recesses of our subconscious. And with the moon, it should be very, I wouldn't say easy, but simple, right? It just takes a matter of feeling into it and allowing ourselves to go deeper into ourselves, into our subconscious, so that we can get a better sense of, the core of who we are and get to the love that's at the core. Now, Jupiter, larger than life, expansive, really is in this ringleader position right now, which can be very attractive. It can really grab our attention. We can be mesmerized, especially in Pisces, definitely mesmerized by the televangelist, mesmerized by the ringleader and the fact that they're able to bring it all together into one experience for all of us. But it's a symbol, whereas the moon in this opposition to Jupiter is keeping our emotions. It's almost like, rather than the expansion, the emotional aspect is contracting into a much deeper part of ourselves in the face of Jupiter. It's like, step right up, right? Come all to the circus, the greatest showman. Jupiter in this degree of Pisces, very much that right now. So it's important that we don't forget about ourselves and what's going on within ourselves. So this is a big part of that as well, is this opposition, right? Pretty much as Mercury is in a sextile. And again, it's in Virgo that we master ourselves to be able to exercise that spiritual will and be an instrument for divine source in the first place. If this is not engaged with, this Virgo or sixth house energy is not engaged with a sense of discipline, with a sense of, commitment and effort and a willingness to go into ourselves, then we won't really have the inner strength and endurance and astral hygiene and discipline to even know what the will of source or God actually is. And then we keep ourselves just completely open to being influenced, especially something like Jupiter, right? Jupiter is mesmerizing all of us with this this circus, right? And that's neither good nor bad. It's just, this is showing how important it is that we don't get caught up in that and to bring ourselves back to our own center. Because again, we have to access the love at the core of who we are first before we can even, access any of this spiritual transcendence with a sense of mastery. Otherwise, like I said, this is where mystics swim, and and this is not just you, this is me, this is a, the collective you or the collective we, if we don't master this realm of Virgo for ourselves and become disciplined, become reconstituted, become something that is worthy of offering ourselves to the social contract or the social order, then yes, we get completely taken over by propaganda. We get taken over by our own psychosis, our own imaginations, our fantasy, escapism, all of the things that Pisces on the dark side represents. And so we don't want to be an abscess of ourselves, but we also want to be able to utilize the resources that we have, right? This is Taurus and the second house, and put them to work, which is the sixth house. So this is happening, again, all first thing this morning, early morning hours, moving into the afternoon, depending on where you are. So challenging already. And the challenge has been, blended with yesterday. It is bled over in some ways. Now, a more quincunx is with Aquarius, right? Is with Saturn, right? Saturn in Aquarius, Saturn that is absolutely giving us some sort of resiliency from the social collective as a whole, right? Aquarius truly is more than the sum of its individual parts, and the individual parts being Leo. It's its opposite. So this quincunx with the moon, with Saturn today is an adjustment, right? An adjustment because this is a very, very dense and almost limiting kind of discouragement and disillusionment are inevitable. And the resiliency that we have is based on facing that adversity with some courage. And like I said, with Saturn here, it makes it inevitable. It makes it such a limiting factor that there could be a lot of depression with people that can't pull themselves out of the discouragement or the disillusionment. So this quincunx with the moon in Virgo, which again has everything to do with what's going on within us, is an opportunity to adjust ourselves in the frustration. And while we are training ourselves individually as part of a larger group or as a larger team, because that's really what Virgo is working towards, is participation in a collective culture as a reconstituted and completely disciplined human being. So think about it as, a basketball team, for instance, coming together and everybody doing their training and doing all of their drills and working together on all of their, all of the different plays that they have. I believe that in basketball they still use that word. I grew up playing baseball, so I use the word play, right, in terms of a different play that you're doing. which has to do with like a very coordinated effort with everybody knowing what their part is and moving together seamlessly. So before you get to that part, everybody's training on their own, but also adding that to the group in order to bring about a feeling of participation, right? You're just starting to add yourself to this process. So that can also feel like it'll feel like it's out of phase with, having to pull ourselves up by our bootstrap and really connect into the collective's energy in order to face adversity. So these things won't seem like they fit, but they actually will allow for transmutation if we can find the place that they will fit. And we can feel, when we feel discouraged or disillusioned, we don't really have the energy to actually keep going. And this is what the quincunx, I think, is really going to assist in. It will feel frustrating. It will feel like, what's the point? But this is exactly the point. And so again, the moon in Virgo is keeping us from abscessing spiritually and energetically, if we see it that way, and giving us something to really work on within ourselves and in our subconscious, in our energy, in our own feelings. So there are two more massive aspects that are happening today. So when we get to the end of today, as I said, here's that beautiful mystic rectangle with Neptune and the nodes of the moon, her own nodes, and Neptune. So Neptune is also moved into the next degree of Pisces. We have been in this realm where every resource that we have has been materialized and given, right, in order to substantiate something. So it's either been conscious or unconscious. But I think people are exhausted. People are really feeling just drained. And Neptune gives this is your job, right? This is your responsibility as a person. And now we're moving into a phase where we can start centralizing our individual participation now, because we're going to start coming into the point of Aries, especially Neptune. A couple years to go, Neptune's coming into Aries, and we're going to have a massive spiritual revival on this planet. And in the meantime, we are closing up massive cycles, humanitarian cycles, large spiritual cycles that are coming to an end, which has a lot to do with the age of Pisces as well. And Neptune being the ruler of it, of course, Neptune's going to come in and be the agent of wrapping all of this shit up. So the opposition to the moon at this same time, and then the nodes as well, you would normally see this opposition here. So all of the trines and the sextiles around these oppositions are opportunities, right, to release that tension. So where is the moon? 24 degrees Neptune, or 24 degrees Virgo, opposite Neptune at this point is the innocence, right? Be as little children as Jesus had commanded his disciples, right? This is about simplicity. This is about vibrance in the core of our being, right? In order to meet the test of existence, we don't want to be just like, again, turning in on ourselves and abscessing spiritually. And so without a very deep and heartfelt simplicity, right, without getting caught up in our own dramas and glamorized by our own successes, right, this is the humility of Virgo. It's important that we keep this heartfelt simplicity, a sense of innocence, a sense of childlike wonder, especially about our spiritual experiences. Otherwise, like I said, we're going to be glamorized by our own successes. And this is a big part of Jupiter right now in Pisces that's, pulling on all of this. And our ego is feeding on the drama of struggle and victory. And you can feel that too, back and forth, back and forth. And people are just so caught up in what's happening. I'm not saying that you shouldn't be. I'm just saying this is what is. So it's opposite Neptune that is starting to bring a very broad, very transcendental and cosmic power to the centralization of our own participation in society, right? So everything has been rendered one field of consciousness. All of that energy has been used to substantiate something. And now where we find ourselves with Neptune is the need to consciously accept our own personal limitations so that we can fulfill our dharma. So the first duty for all of us is to just truly be who we are. And eventually we will all come to realize the oneness within the whole. But we also are now dealing with the reality of ego boundaries, because they can be a zone of the interchange from the inner and the outer, just like the seed. The shell of the seed is the ego boundary, and there is an interaction between the inside and the outside of the seed through the shell, which is the ego boundary. So we are now starting to come back into a need to consciously accept what we're here to do. And the opposition of the Virgo moon is pulling on that, because we are keeping ourselves and our own feelings and our own emotional landscape as pure as little children. And little children are not surviving on a small deserted island with a small group of people and everybody having to fulfill their role. So this is very strong. But as I said earlier, look at the mystic rectangle. This is where the tension of that is released, and with the nodes as well. So if you look at the Virgo moon in a trine to our north node, again, it shows that there's something pure, simplistic, something that is natural that we can connect into about survival and about thriving. And yes, it will feel aggressive as the consciousness develops to differentiate between us and them. And this is a natural part of it. But keeping our inner self as a little child, as simplistic, as full of love and innocence is absolutely supporting where we're going at a soul level. Now, again, Neptune, in the same way, is in a trine with the South Node. And with these trines, right, they are harmonious and foundational, but we don't really have to do much with them. So we are seeing here that when we acknowledge our dharma and our personal limitations, when we accept this, we surrender to it with Neptune, because in fact, Neptune is the ocean, is completely surrounding this tiny little island of ourselves, right? And that we have no choice but to really accept this mission or accept this situation. Well, remember that this was in a past situation with the South Node. We've already at a soul level not only mastered this, but it has allowed us to take that realization, that spiritual realization, and apply it to everyday life, which is really very powerful, because it's the South Node that gives us the momentum to move towards our soul's evolution. But it's definitely not where we're headed right now. It also has a lot to do with where we've been karmically. So the moon, again, sextile to this, or Neptune sextile to the North Node. Again, this is the 60-degree angle that allows for activation. There's an investment in one and the other to get the most out of this situation. And I think where we're going to find is there's a lot of raw power here with the North Node that we are being drawn to, and we are being drawn to in order to evolve at a collective level. And if we can invest that it's very primal and very connected to the material existence. I feel like that this Neptune in Pisces is exactly the type of descent of the spiritual that will allow us to commune with this North Node without it becoming, and with the moon in Virgo in this innocence, without us becoming brutal, right, as a society and as individuals. And when we're talking about the North Node, we're talking about Neptune, we are talking about much larger social context. The moon is about each of us individually and how we're responding to all of this. There's such a need to keep this simplicity and to find that innocence, so that our ego isn't being fed necessarily, or that we're not getting caught up in all of our successes, that we are remaining pure and simplistic. So this is, what is this? This is 8:21 Eastern Standard Time p.m. With this mystic rectangle. And the last real transit that I want to discuss for this transmission is that Mars in Aquarius is in a trine to dwarf planet Ceres, which is very close to Black Moon Lilith, by the way. And so Ceres is the goddess of agriculture, goddess of the grain. Her daughter is Persephone, who was lured into the underworld and was basically lured into being Hades' counterpart or wife. And symbolically, we look at the divine feminine pattern of and cycle of maiden, woman, crone that is experienced through the cyclic process of our seasons and our climate and agriculture. And how important it is for the process of agriculture to experience that cycle. Now, that's very connected to the part of the world where a lot of Western astrology really developed, which is the Northern Hemisphere. And the idea that if you were to go to the equator and people saw, if you were from the equator and you lived in a year-round situation with growth, it would really have an impact on your psyche if you went to further north or south and discovered that there is autumn and that there is death and that there is a contraction phase. So, but this is also, a very, very strong resonance to our original blueprint, where we're from as humans, right? The divine feminine, and to never forget our legacy and our ancient connection to humanity. And with Ceres involved, it has a lot to do as well with the nourishment of us and the process of going through our own cycles in order to maintain that system. We're getting into Aldebaran territory. So it is in a trine to Mars up here in Aquarius, an air trine, as you can see, and also with Black Moon Lilith as well. And Chiron's going to be part of this picture. And in fact, you're going to see this beautiful kite with the astrology for tomorrow with Chiron at the... and into Saturday with Chiron at the head of the kite. But in the meantime, where, Mars is really acting out the vision, right? It's going from symbol to actual action, right? It is no longer archetypal, but something that is put into action or put out into put out for others to experience and interact with. And Mars, again, this is output, this is action. And Aldebaran is Archangel Michael. And so the vision of Archangel Michael, right? The warrior aspect and the survival part, again, that is very, very close to both Lilith and then with Ceres in conjunction with Aldebaran, which is connected to Archangel Michael, is directly trine Mars that is acting out this spiritual ideal vision of society. So this could... again, be very aggressive, and with the North Node where it is, it very much could be, but it also shows what we are actually fighting to preserve. Like, what is it that we are aggressively attempting to preserve or to act on? And well, it's this ideal vision that was consummated with Venus on the 5th. So that's something to consider as well. Like, how do we live in these two places? Well, it's a good thing that the moon is in Virgo, because that's exactly where you figure out how to live as a material and spiritual being, acknowledging that they are in fact different aspects of existence, but also bringing them and blending them together. This is truly masterful work. And I know it's been very difficult for us. And in fact, I mean, this transmission is a lot longer than I would have planned on, but that's because there's just so much happening today. But I am going to leave it there for now. We're going to be together for the Catalyst Astrology Report tomorrow. We are going to do much more of a Starseed Ministry type of stream because it's the full moon. So I'll have things for you tomorrow, and we'll be together live on YouTube. You can catch the replay on BitChute and Rumble, of course, afterwards, and on YouTube. But I love you guys. Thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. I truly hope that this transmission has given you a sense of, just calm, maybe some humility if it's needed, and a sense of inner strength and inner mastery of oneself, because we're going into territory now where we're starting to really, again, bear down and bring forward that which is, and protect that which is truly valuable to us. And we have access to so much in this situation that is like I said, the sword of Archangel Michael, the flaming sword. Well, this is the sword in the museum that is the symbol of spiritual will, that Mercury is in a sextile with Uranus today. It was the new moon. So it's just an opportunity to come around and reconnect with why we're even doing this in the first place, and what is it that we are putting everything behind with this new moon type of energy, because it's going to have a big impact on how we move forward. And especially with the full moon, we're going to have incredible illumination and a coming to God type of moment, and seeing where emotionally, if we can seize power of ourselves in order to induce some sort of catabolic change, or we find ourselves like acting out of willpower that is much more service to self, or is serving some other master because we don't have good energetic hygiene, and all of this Pisces energy has pulled us into a sense of escapism and fantasy. So with that being said, if you are interested in a reading, you're interested in energy work to support your process, you can find everything you need in the description box below, including the website link, including email for Catalyst Energies, including Telegram, including Subscribestar. It's all there. So thank you so much, everyone. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. Have a great day. There'll be more coming up on Telegram. We'll be together tomorrow for the Starseed Ministry and the Catalyst Astrology Report for the full moon. And until then, take really good care of yourselves, guys. I'll see you tomorrow. Peace out.